Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my Halloween movie marathon. And tonight I'm going over a relatively older film. I consider it incredibly underrated, called Peeping Tom. Now, this movie actually came out in the same year as Psycho, but didn't get nearly enough traction. From what I heard, this is also what killed the career of its director, Michael Powell, which is a shame because this movie was really, really good. Like, I just saw it on Tubi a minute ago. I consider it to be, like, again, like with Psycho, one of the very first slasher films, and I'd argue that it's more of a slasher than Psycho, just on the pure basis that there's more kills. Now, there's not a whole lot of kills in it, given that it came out in 1960, and it's not very bloody either. I think that Psycho has a little bit more blood than this one, but I still consider this to be like more of a slasher than Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, just because, well, there's more kills. The story itself is pretty good about basically, it's about this kind of like loner, awkward guy named Mark Lewis, who was traumatized throughout all of his childhood by his father for constantly photographing him and trying to capture like the fear on his face. So now, because of that, he kind of projects that onto his victims while filming them to basically create a snuff film. And this was a really interesting premise. I originally heard about this film like from this like really old film book that my grandmother had given me like well over a decade ago, and throughout like this entire 400 something page book, I remember seeing an image from Peeping Tom in there, and that always stuck with me. So so this movie has always been in the back of my mind, but I finally decided that since I'm doing this Halloween marathon, I'd review this film, since while it's not well known, like I said, I consider it to be like one of the original slasher films, if not the very first one. But Michael Powell is a pretty good director. I'll have to look into more of his films, because this movie is honestly like one of the more stylish ones that I've covered, and definitely one of the more like style over substance. Sorry, that was a bad way to put it, but like this is one of the more like stylish films that I'm covering in this series overall. Like the shots are great. The juxtaposition is pretty good, where like someone starts to pour a glass of bourbon or whatever, and then it cuts to Mark pouring like these chemicals onto the film to develop them. Those shots are really great. The lighting is pretty good. I mean, the music is great. I think this is this is like the most unique music that I've heard in a horror film. Like, because in addition to like the creepy piano music that some of the older films have done, and like what I have done in a lot of my own short films, they also use like this jazz music, which gives this film a really unique kind of atmosphere, because like it's not exactly just a horror film. I consider it also to be sort of like a character study of Mark Lewis, because like you already, unlike slasher films of like the 70s or the 80s, like you kind of already know who the killer is. Like it's revealed very, very early on that the serial killer is Mark Lewis, which is fine, because I mean the film follows his character. It doesn't follow a final girl at all. Which, speaking of Mark, Mark is played by the actor Carl Boehm, if I'm saying his name right, and he plays like this awkward loner guy really good, and that also adds to kind of the creep factor uh, where basically every scene he's in is like really tense and suspenseful, and you never really know like when he's going to just start killing someone. And going off of that, his signature weapon in the film, where he has like this sharp knife or spike that's attached to the end of his camera tripod, is a I think is a pretty unique weapon, and also like fits in line with his character, right? Where like Jason has his machete, Freddy has his glove, Michael has a butcher knife, and Mark Lewis has a sharpened point on the end of his camera that he films women with before he kills them. And I thought that was a pretty cool, clever move. Opposite acting of Carl is Anna Massey, if I'm saying that right. She plays great as Helen. There's many moments where she's not even speaking, but you can see like the emotion clear on her face. So she does great. Even the other characters, like her mother, this one guy named Tony, who I'll get into that in a minute, and some of the people that Mark films, they're great in their acting, whether their roles are minor or major. And there's a little bit of humor in it too. Early on in the film, like there's the scene where this guy orders like these nude photos from a photo shop, and the owner that Mark works for, he puts them in an envelope labeled educational books, and that got a laugh out of me. I don't know if it was intentional, but I thought it was funny. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm trying to read it through the section in the book to see if there's anything else that I might have forgotten, but no, I think that's it. So I walked into this movie like thinking that I wouldn't really have anything bad to say about, because the negatives that I would usually have about slasher these days, about like not that many kills, and like not a lot of blood, like I wasn't going to talk about that in this film, because like this movie came out in 1960, so of course it wouldn't have that. If I said anything, it would be like a cheap shot. However, back to what I was saying about the music, with the jazz music specifically, there's one scene in particular where they just play jazz music constantly, and even though it is funny that later on in the film, when they play the music again and this one detective just starts snapping his fingers, which again, going with the dark humor, got a little bit of a laugh out of me. During that whole sequence, like I completely forgot that it was a horror film, and I'm pretty sure that wasn't the intention, so maybe that's just a personal thing for me, though. And then the second thing that I was a little bit iffy on is the character of Tony. There's a few moments where he's in the movie where he's talking to Anna's character Helen, who basically becomes Mark's love interest. And there's a few specific lines that he has, such as it seems like you don't have much time for me anymore. And it always makes me wonder, like, was he supposed to be her boyfriend, like, before Mark showed up? Because if they did that, I don't remember it. And it just feels weird that, like, it feels like they were trying to set up a love triangle between Tony, Helen, and Mark, even though Tony only has like a maximum of 3 scenes in this entire film. But I don't know, I just thought that whole thing was weird. Um, but those are the only two things that I thought were a little bit off about this film. Which the last thing I'm gonna mention is there are a few jump scares, and honestly, I'm okay with it because these are the only times that the jump scares actually worked. Like, there's a scene where Mark is showing Helen these old childhood films, and like at one point in the film when Mark was a kid, his father dropped like a salamander onto his bed to make him scared, um, and looking back, if I was younger, that would probably freak me out a bit. And again, that's just a jump scare that would actually work, in my opinion. And then in the same scene, like when Helen is watching the film, Mark puts his hand on her shoulder and she turns around and screams a bit. Again, another jump scare that actually works for me. But that's really all that I gotta say about this film. Aside from that, again, going with this, in my opinion, being like the very first slasher. And there's a few things that I noticed that I don't know if it was intentional, but I feel like could have inspired some of the more mainstream slashers. Like during the opening scene, it's completely like shot as if it's like being through the lens of a Super 8 camera with the whole crosshairs, and it's almost completely in first person, kind of similar to the opening shot of Halloween. And I feel like a broken record saying this, but like that actually works for me because like it immediately shows you like how the killer is killing his victims, right? He's filming them and then he kills them. So in my opinion, that scene just worked for me better than the opening shot of Halloween because, like I've already said, that I hate first person perspectives for horror movie villains. That's just my personal preference. And then like and then during that scene when Mark is showing Helen the footage of his father filming him when he was a kid, at one point like he's caressing his camera and speaking to himself as if it's his father speaking to him, and immediately that reminded me of not only Norman Bates and his mother talking to him, but also reminded me of Pamela Voorhees and speaking to herself as if her son Jason was speaking to her. Or maybe I'm just looking too deep into this, and it's just a fun slasher film. But that's it for this movie. Wow, I talked about this longer than I thought I would, but I wouldn't say that it's like that's a Halloween classic, but still definitely check it out because it's highly underrated. It's kind of a shame that it killed Michael Powell's career because apparently people were just too shocked and disturbed from this because it was a really good film. But even if you don't check it out during Halloween, like definitely watch it at some point because even looking past it as being like a horror thriller film, like it's still a very well made film. Like I'd honestly watch this one over Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho and Ready the Pitchforks and Torches, but I said what I said. But I'll see you guys next time for another review, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good night.